Welcome to the 5th week of the 2nd season, Office Hours Arbitrage. We're a very international group. We have somebody from Japan. Woke up super freaking early to join us today, and I really appreciate it. We've got Yuki. Yuki, you've got a very interesting post that you made, and I swear I must have been 20 hours trying to read all the different Bara gem modeling stuff I could find. I even looked through my academic access to see if I could maybe get a better insight into what it is you were looking at. But Bara locks down their stuff really hard, so I wasn't able to dig up too much. Yuki, where do you live? I think I gave it away, but I'll ask anyway.
Yeah, okay. I live in Japan. It's near Nagoya City. Do you know Nagoya?
I'm afraid I don't. I'm a dumb American.
Okay. It's located in central part of Japan. It's between Tokyo and Kyoto. Have you ever visited to Japan?
Well, you know what? I've been meaning to make it over there. If you give me an invitation, I'll put it on my calendar, like sometime in the distant future when we're allowed to travel again. So, Yuki, what do you do for a living?
Actually, I have my own company. It's an investment company, like a private fund, but the asset is not so much. It's about $1 million or so, and the member is just two. My partner Hoheto and me.
Okay, so you're in finance, so that makes a lot of sense why your article was written like a finance professional. I think that's probably why I liked it so much, because it's in my language. It's how I speak day to day. Yuki, so maybe you can help us a little bit. This is a question to help clarify things. How would your parents describe what you do for a living?
My parents said that my son has own company and is working for it, but they know it is an investment company, but they don't know the details. So I don't think they can describe well.
I resemble that. Yeah, I think a lot of the people that ask that question, they say the same thing, that what they do is complex, and so their parents try their best. But I think what you said was fine. You run an investment management firm, and you're starting out, and it's pretty clear you know a lot about the markets based on your article. Yuki, what do you do for fun?
I have a lot of hobby, but maybe the best is trading and market analysis. On holiday, I take my kids around, and in my free time, I always doing the market analysis.
So you're a workaholic like the rest of us. That's what you're telling me. That's fine. Hey, you know what? Everybody's advice lately has been just work harder. You know, you're home, work harder. It's like, okay, wow, I'm with a bunch of workaholics, a bunch of no fun workaholics. Yuki, how did you find out about Numerai?
I think that is in 2016. I saw the Numerai's article of Wired article, and I was very excited to see it.
Do you remember when in 2016?
I think February in 2016.
I think you beat me. What's your tournament username that you started with?
UKI, Yuki.
Okay, so it's the same. It's kind of like me then.
Yeah.
Matches. I'm gonna creep your profile real quick. So technically, your model says you woke March 5th of 2017. So did you wait a while before you started participating?
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard that from a lot of people. They took a look at it, weren't sure, and then they came back after a while. So that kind of resembles a lot of the feedback that I get from people. So you read the Wired article, and you started in 2016. What do you wish you had known when you started out?
All right, just a moment. When I participated in Numerai tournament in 2016, the ranking fluctuated so much and so quickly, and I didn't know how to evaluate my submission. So I just stopped, and I came back in April in this year after the COVID shock.
When
And
you had more time
recently,
to work on it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And recently, the participants' performance is really well. So if I had known that, maybe my modeling approach is different from now, I think.
Yeah, so maybe a little more stability would have helped and a longer evaluation window for yourself.
Yes, I like raw meta model correlation, but recently the meta model is performance really well. I think I will make the model not considering the meta model correlation, I think.
Okay. So, Yuki, many people believe that the tournament is too challenging and it becomes overwhelming and too much to handle. Why do you think people feel that way about the tournament?
I've been researching for stock market for years, but the market data is just too noisy, I think.
Yeah.
So it's easy to overfit and difficult to get the valid feature in the future. Now most of participants have a good performance in Numerai, so I think this is awesome.
I agree.
And yeah, I think the participant modeling skills are really good. But before that, the Numerai is creating great features under the limitation of obfuscation.
Yeah, that's interesting. The run that we've had is pretty much extraordinary. We've never had such a good sequence of positive correlation for the majority of users. And yeah, I do think that it's certainly drawing in new people and giving them a lot of confidence to participate, and I hope they stick around. Yuki, what programming language do you use and why do you use it?
I used to use C,
No.
but now I use Python. Actually, I'm not a programmer. I used to be a hardware engineer, so to be honest, I'm not good at programming.
I resemble that comment. Yeah, I think that there's several people that are in the Zoom right now who would agree with you that they have either quantitative background in the traditional sciences, and then applying it in this way with Python, they feel a little fish out of water syndrome, if you will, perhaps a little imposter syndrome. So I can relate to that as well. I used Numerai to learn how to be a better coder. So that's how I came in, and I use Python as well. Yuki, you have a pretty long time experience with the tournament. Can you tell us your top 3 tips for the tournament?
All right. In some time, some features have very high correlation just by themselves, although they have a raw meta model correlation. For example, it is DEX37, but DEX37 is not good 1 or 2 weeks ago. But in that period, I think feature of consumer outperforms well. So a simple combination of such a feature may be able to read high MMC. This is just what I do.
Okay, so that was 1 tip. Can you give me 2 more?
Yes.
I'm just gonna squeeze you of tips as much as I can, my friend. I want to get as much out of you as I can possibly get.
So recently, I stuck in numerous signals more than the tournament. And I'm focusing on the US market, and I realized that we can have good results just by the price data, and the momentum, the price momentum is really effective. And
Can you give me one more tip for the tournament?
yes, so sorry, now I just have two.
Oh, he's holding back. He's holding back. Get your pitchforks out, folks. He's the first one that hasn't given 3 tips to us. So that's okay, Yuki. I won't pressure you. That's fine. You've given us a
Oh, thank
lot with
you.
that article anyway, because
Mm-hmm.
I found it very insightful, like I said. So here's something fun. I'd like to ask you a fun question. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Oh, I thought about it, but I don't have any idea about this billboard. It is really difficult.
It is, yeah. It's your
Mm,
own marquee. You can say whatever you want.
billboard. Maybe I have my company's billboard. Maybe
There
I
you
think.
go. Advertise
Yeah,
for increasing
yeah,
AUM.
that's right. Yes.
My man, capitalist right there. Good for you. But that's some good individuality there. I have another question. This one's controversial, but I ask it of everybody. Who is your favorite team member at Numerai?
You mean is it your member of Numerai or the tournament participants?
Oh, we're gonna stick to the team because I don't want to get into fights among my friends.
Okay, okay. If you're a member of Numerai, it's definitely NJ.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, she
I
helped
kind
me
of
a lot while
anticipated that one.
yeah, writing the article. She helps me a lot.
She's very helpful. She's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, I think
I
so.
think she's actually the real boss. Richard's here, and he may even vouch for that. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, NJ's great. Everybody. By the way, this puts NJ in the lead for season 2 because this is the first repeat vote. This is the 5th episode, and this is the first repeat vote. So NJ's up by 1. Yuki, Japan's also under quarantine like the rest of the world, but how would you like? How are you handling the quarantine? How do you make it a positive experience for yourself?
Oh, I don't understand this question.
That's
What
okay.
is quarantine?
Quarantine. So the COVID lockdown.
Oh. Okay, okay. I think there are many participants in the US, but now Japan, it's not so much. I think washing hand is the best thing, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how your population density in Japan is very, very high, but the COVID-19 incident rate is much lower than other parts of the world. So clearly Japan's doing something right. So you also told us that you started working on the tournament more with your extra free time. So I'm just going to extrapolate and suggest that that's the workaholic in us all, that just go ahead and just bear down and get to work. So I have another question that I'd like to ask about the tournament. What's your number one feature request or suggestion for improvement to make the tournament better?
Okay. I think numerous this set and tournament are very nice, and I'm really happy with them. And to give you 1 point, and like validation 2, how about adding the result round to validation data every week? But in my experience, it tends to have better result to add the most recent data and rely it. But not rolling training period, but just adding the tournament period. Rolling is often worse. And however, we need to take care of overrunning to recent data. So in some case, it could have a bad result.
So some more validation data. I
Yeah,
agree.
I don't think everyone agree this. It may affect badly.
Yeah, in some way of give us some kind of statistic as to how the validation data is similar or dissimilar to other data, for instance. Whether that's distributional statistics to help us kind of align it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would also be helpful. But it definitely at least 30 validation eras to start with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be helpful. Also, just an aside so that you're aware, Yuki, the validation data is monthly. If
Yeah,
we
monthly.
added the weekly series to it, it might skew it. So it would have to be one of 4 weeks added
Yeah.
as a validation month.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that selection process works on the back end, but I definitely agree with you. Yuki, do you have 10 models in the tournament?
Actually, I have 3 models right now.
3, okay.
Yeah, one for tournaments and one for signals, and the last is the monitor of the future.
Okay, so that makes sense to kind of like a detection
Yes, that's right.
models. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'm
Thinking.
thinking of making another stake model for the tournament. I like models with low meta model correlation, but other participants are currently really doing too well. So I think I should have much more model. Not thinking about meta model correlation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said, your article inspired me to do a lot more research, and the number of hours that I spent kind of looking at different metrics based on your article was too high, way too high. But I do appreciate the article. Let's go to some fun questions here. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
I will advise to start investing as soon as possible. I started investing when I was 26, I think. I wish I had started earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Compound gains for the win, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a data scientist?
Or actually, I'm not a data scientist, so I don't think I can give good advice. But the only thing I can say is that the important thing is to make sure that data scientist job is interesting or not interesting to you. I think you can get better high skills in any field if you have a passion for it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic advice. I completely agree. You have to be excited by what you do, or you will not. You just won't be successful. I struggled as a younger man with that. I did something I didn't fully enjoy, but thought that was the best path, right? And it took me a while to figure that out. That's really good advice. Do some kind of data science in a field that you like and be passionate about it. That's really good. Yuki, there's another thing I like to ask, and that is, if you could step into my shoes, what would you ask yourself that I haven't already?
It's a difficult question, but if I were you, I would ask their tips for the real market, I think.
Ooh, I definitely have kind of avoided that. So, Yuki, what's your tips for the real stock market?
Actually, I am investing market neutral method, long and short. It's really good, I think. In capital shock, I actually had good returns. The market is sometimes going down. It's really high drawdown. So market neutral method is, I think it is the best way to invest.
Market neutral? Yeah, I can buy into that. And I think Richard would 100% agree too. And he'd say just be neutral to everything, not just the market, but everything. So that's really great. Yuki, thank you so much for hopping on and taking my questions.
Yeah.
If you'll stick around, there's actually some questions in my Slido for you. Are you able to hang out with us for a little while longer today?
Oh, of course.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. If you need to get up and get some coffee or water, You know, I know it was 5 a.m. You got up really early to hang out with us. We greatly appreciate it. So,
yeah,
so thanks
I am
for hanging
fine.
out.
Okay.
But yeah, just stick around and we'll continue on. I want to get to the Slido questions because I was really like super bummed that all you guys wanted to talk about was my haircut or the lack thereof. And now there's a bunch of really cool questions that I'm very keen to get to. So if Numerai hires a few more top competitors from the leaderboard, do they even need all other users anymore? Yes, they still need us because groupthink. I think, I don't know, Michael and Michael can probably chime in here, but now that they know each other and work together, the difference in their learning set has converged. And so the benefit is immediate from an outsider joining in that new learning mode, but then they all converge together, right? So I would just say that if that is a pattern, that it will reach its maximum at some point, or they hire you and then fire you. Oh, I don't know. It's you know, steal the IP. I don't know. No, they'll definitely need us because everybody that's here has different life experiences and different ways of looking at the problem set, and that's exactly how we're going to move the meta model forward, is having a very diverse user base that's trying to solve the problem in a different way. So yes, they will definitely need other users. They could never hire enough of us to get the meta model just right, because once you get the data, you start overfitting. What sort of basic tuning would you recommend for neural net in this data set? Epochs, batch size, learning rate, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's why I showed the code. So my recommendation is to keep it simple.
I just checked my, like, I have exactly your same parameters on Keras. You know?
Really? Oh, man.
Like layer size is 64, but batch size is 300, epochs 300, and learning rate is 0.001. But I guess my question is, like, I mean, those are like sort of like the basic out of the box parameters that you get and that like everybody on Kaggle uses. But I don't know if anybody wants to, like, you know, share like what would you try after this? It's like, I don't want specifics, but like, you know, I mean, if you want to share them, okay, but you know, it's
no,
like,
Kino, it's fine. It's okay. I think that I can tell you.
So, I mean, I'm gonna try like a ton more of like epochs, like maybe like 1,000, because like, you know, if you keep your like learning rate low, apparently you converge at a lower loss and you get like a better one. Like smaller batch sizes, like bigger layers, more like dense layers in the middle. But I don't know if there's like a sort of like a tried and true like method for like, you know, these sort of like high noise, low signal data sets that, you know, anybody can.
I just think keep it simple, stupid. I honestly do. I mean, Bohr's my friend, so I'm going to pick on him again. But I just don't think it's necessary to use all these crazy methods. I just don't. I think that you can build a very performant model if you use some type of ensembling. I think by now everybody's figured out that my arbitrage models are ensembles. I don't think that's a secret at this point, because I've talked so much about what I do and how I keep it simple, and I'm looking for weak learners. And I said a week or two ago that I kind of think of it like a mean variance optimization problem. And what do you need in a portfolio to maximize your return? You need uncorrelated assets, a lot of them. And so I look for models that are not correlated, and I put them all together. So I don't think that's a shock to anybody that's in this Zoom. So as far as like trying to get this perfect neural net, I'm kind of anti one model, one solution. I want to find many models that give me a decent solution and then put them together. Joe, how many models do I have in the ensemble? A bunch.
I don't ensemble at all.
God bless you. But you actually, that's not true. If you use XGBoost, you are ensembling.
Well, I just suggested you can use XGBoost. I don't use XGBoost myself.
Well, so but still, you are ensembling if you have anything that iteratively.
Well, I mean, you could say that essentially a neural net is an ensemble of linear models with nonlinearities thrown in. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but again, I want to stress the importance of optimizing your Sharpe. Minimize your downside variance in the validation data. I don't have a model that I've submitted so far that doesn't have at least one burn validation error, but it's a lot lower than the example predictions. I think that's very important. I'm not trying to hit a home run on correlation. In fact, I'd be concerned if my average correlation was too high, because I think I'd be overfit. I just want smooth and consistent. Do your own evaluation and look at what your return would be if you had an average 2% positive correlation and a minimum burn of 1.3%, and have that be 5% of the time that you burn. Go ahead and look at what that looks like, and then compare it to these models that are punching super high. Compare it to my main model, Arbitrage. They're vastly different. I think that optimizing your Sharpe is the way to go. And so I'm going to continue to talk about that in the weeks to come. What's the strangest thing you've tried in this tournament, and did it work? Well, I've done a lot of weird things. K nearest neighbors is probably the strangest thing I did. Why was it strange? It was strange because it was right on the edge of just completely melting my computer, because it's extremely memory intensive. And I think I did different sized clusters. I think what I found to be most performant was just under 30, about maybe 21 to 27. This is when we had 21 features. Because when it moved up to 51, I couldn't run it anymore. I was really bummed. But I found it was pretty good. And I don't think I would use it now, especially with 310 features. I don't think that could fit in anybody's memory the way K nearest neighbors works. I also, for some time, I only uploaded a logistic regression, and I staked on it, and it was very performant. I thought that was goofy, but it worked. In fact, for a few months, I put it in Arbitrage. This is like 2 years ago. But it was doing so well, I was like, well, geez, I might as well just put on my main model, get my rank up a bit. I thought that was strange because it's such a basic thing. But again, weak learners are good. And then ensembling weak learners together is performant. Yuki, so we have a question that maybe you can help me answer. What is the most notable hedge fund in Japan?
In Japan, most people do not invest in hedge fund, but however, I think hedge fund with machine learning are increasing. But recently, not hedge funds, robo advisors are more popular for Japanese people, I think.
Oh, okay. Anonymous had a question. It says, where do you see Numerai and its user base in a few years? Well, I see it expanding significantly, and I'd like to see it grow significantly in the short run, but have people stick around. I think there's a bit too much churn, so I'd like to see people stick around. More users helps because it's different eyes on the problem. How sad is it? How sad is it that most of us can't seem to beat the example predictions? I mean, but here's the thing: the example predictions have really high average correlation, and they're not looking at Sharpe. So I think the example model could be a recipe for ruin at some point, and we just don't know. We just don't know. Somebody made an observation in Rocket Chat that the example model was rank under 500 for a spell. I don't ever want to experience that kind of oscillation in rank. But again, I'm trying to get away from correlation rank. If you look at the example predictions, Numerai Sharpe, which I put in Rocket Chat, the Numerai Sharpe is something like 2.13 annualized, which also accounts for trading costs. I think that if you can get a Numerai Sharpe that's higher than the example predictions, then you will beat the example model.
Are MMC and correlation so different such that it's really unlikely we would ever see a single model that's really good at both? Say top 50 of the leaderboard on both.
I think if people stop staking on XGBoost, because I think that we have so many models that are basically correlation chasing, that it's pushing the performance of the meta model to be very similar to that. And if we all tried to have very high Numerai Sharpe instead, the meta model itself may not swing as wildly, but its own Sharpe would be better. And I think alpha would improve, but also the way that we get Numerai Sharpe higher individually may be very different. And so I think in the future, it's possible that takes place. Joe is asking, well, yes. He says, "Hi, Yuki, thanks for your great blog post." I agree, it was a really good blog post. And Joe is asking, are people, like, in other words, your colleagues, your coworkers, or people in industry, are they skeptical about blending machine learning with a traditional quantitative approach?
I think many people are skeptical. There are AI investment trusts in Japan, but to be clear, they don't perform well. They don't beat the market.
Yeah, it's very early. I don't have access to the database, but there is a hedge fund research index that tracks AI. I can't see the data though, so I know that it exists. I just don't know how they're performing. Oh, you know, I feel like somebody posted something about that not too long ago in Rocket Chat, and it showed that while there was some performance several years ago, lately it's been rather neutral or even declining slightly. Any news on more metrics? Live Sharpe, drawdown length and depth, others, validation set performance, etc. So I'm going to take the tail end of that question on the others validation set performance and just kind of toss it to the team. Maybe they can pop in and say if they're going to reveal that or not.
The one thing that makes it kind of weird is that you can just like train on validation. It wouldn't be very informative in some cases.
Yeah.
So that is one thing, but
that's kind of what I think too. You know, like I said, I've disclosed that 2/3 of my models have some or all the validation data in it, and so you can't draw any inference. And that was actually a problem when I was trying to create new models, because I really only had 2 accounts that I could draw any inference from because I train on validation. And so I started kicking myself in the ass all last week because I realized I don't have enough data to really explore that problem because I was training on validation. So I screwed myself, fam. That was a tactical error when it came to now having to redeploy new models. I have to wait quite a while before I can draw inference out of what I'm doing. Any thoughts on the negative skew of correlation distribution of recently resolved rounds? No. I don't think it means anything. I think we're going to see oscillations and all kinds of different stuff happen. And what I would love to see is some kind of cluster analysis. Like, can we just look at the linear models, just look at the tree-based models, and just look at the neural nets? Because I'm sure that we can kind of parse that out. We couldn't do it. I mean, the team could, and I think that would be very interesting to see. And wouldn't be deterministic. It would still obviously just be an ML problem by itself. But if you just put 3 clusters up, I think you'd capture 90% of everybody. And it would just be interesting to see that kind of how they change the distribution. How well does MMC correlate with actual usefulness of the current/new meta model? So Michael Oliver, maybe you want to talk about that. Is he still here? Unless Mike P, you want to try that one?
I think it correlates a lot over like a long period of time. It's really hard to see it in any single week though.
When there will be the next heavy burn period, or in other words, -5% for a few weeks in succession, for example, prediction gang, got it. Would that result in a crash of the Numerai price? No. No, because if you're adjusting your risk appropriately, you're selling as you're performing well, and you should be buying when you're not performing well. Richard mentioned that target. See, I'm sorry, Bor, I can't quite make sense of that. Or he hopped? Yeah, he hopped. Richard mentioned that target meaning changed going from Bernie to Kaz. Went from something to residual something. That's really clear. Thank you, Bor. Would that result in a crash? I don't even know. Can you explain slowly? Richard, I don't know if you're multitasking too hardcore to catch that.
Can I explain what slowly?
That the target meaning changed from Bernie to Kazutsugi. It went from something to residual something.
Yeah. I mean, by residual, you kind of mean the part of the return that's not explained by the other things that explain return. So if Apple goes up 10% in 1 month, but the US tech industry is up 8% that month, then the residual return is just the 2%. Because if we're going to be US technology neutral, we care about the residual piece because we're going to be short something. Ideally, that went up a little bit less than 8%, but we would want to be long Apple. And so that's a big change, because if you look at returns of stocks, really a lot of the returns can be explained by sectors and countries and factors. And by taking all those out, you make a problem that's kind of a little bit harder, but also can tend to be a bit more stable. Because if we left the Bernie return in, the previous returns were without this residualization, you might end up making a model that's really just a model that's a long bet on one sector. And that's bad for you, because you might be right in sample, but it's very unlikely that that sector bet would be the main thing driving the market for the rest of its life.
So it's the idiosyncratic error that we're predicting.
Yeah.
Or idiosyncratic risk. Sorry, I said error, but I meant risk. The individual unique security thing that is not correlated to anything else. The error term in a CAPM equation.
Exactly.
Except if you're using a CAPM equation, I quit.
Definitely not quite.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I gather from what you're saying that the targets are returns residual, so at least to the market and to sectors and maybe sort of countries. Do you also residualize, say, to like a standard set of borrow factors? Or are those among the features?
Now he's getting to Yuki's post.
Yeah, we do. So once you've explained the sector, country and sector are a big part of returns, but then factors are as well. And factors like the value factor or whatever,
momentum,
are important to neutralize out as well.
Cool. So those are not in the Kazutsugi target value, say.
Well, so there's some of our features might be sort of things to do with value.
Right.
Of course, that's what I guessed, which is why I'm surprised at some of the things you said. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't like neutralize to some other measure of value. So like
I get it.
Yeah. So you can think about it like very much inspired by the Barra model, where the major Barra risks are country, sector, and factor returns, and we are trying to take all of those out.
Well, Richard, that's what's required of you by potential investors, is that you're neutral to those things, because they can just buy that exposure on their own. They don't need to pay you to do it. Correct?
Yeah. And what we thought we could do in the previous versions of the tournament was that we could give you guys you could just model the raw returns, and then in our optimizer, we could just pull out all of the factor returns and the sector return, neutralize to them.
There was nothing left.
There's very little left.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So having the focus be, from the beginning, having the target match what we actually want is much better. And so that's why those targets were a big help.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that explains why we're kicking so much ass on this data set? Or do you think that's coincidental and just the markets are kind of juicy for quant funds at the moment?
No, I don't think the markets are that good for quant funds. As you maybe read, some of the top market neutral funds, one of them, Renaissance's funds, is down 20% this year.
AQR is hurting.
AQR is hurting, but they take a lot of factor exposure. But
AQR is a different beast.
Yeah, even the ones that don't take factor exposure haven't done well. But I think there's kind of like some interplay between if you have a target that is residual, then the models that tend to get learned just tend to generalize more anyway. So it's not even like, yeah, it's so yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I think the targets are a big reason, but I also think that it's sort of like if you're going to do a machine learning problem in the same format that we've set things up, it really is quite like well designed for residual targets. But it wouldn't make as much sense to have the whole problem set up without them. Like the other approach we could have done is given the users all of the sector and factor data and said, here's the country category, here's the value category or something like that. And then had them kind of think about the whole problem. But I think this approach is a lot better because you're building things that tend to be much more robust and generalize better, because anything you're learning on this data set is something that applies to all sectors and to all countries and to all regimes, ideally.
Thanks, Richard. I also wanted to ask you if you could expand a little more on the Numerai Sharpe thing. I had hoped you'd talk about it a bit more in the fireside chat, but you had a meeting and had to scoot before I could ask you to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I said we look at this thing where you can take if you want to kind of get an estimate of what the cost would be. Costs are a big factor in a quant fund with a lot of leverage. So it's not like there's nothing theoretical about what I said or anything. It's just a kind of experimental thing. So,
but you would want something for us to submit. You would want our calculated Numerai Sharpe to be as high as possible. That would be more beneficial than something with a very high average correlation. True or false?
I'm not going to answer true or false to that question. It would be, yeah, here's how I would say it. If we were only trading your model and we didn't have any other models, we might ask you, if we had to only trade your model, we might ask you to optimize for Numerai Sharpe, or also Numerai Sharpe, the one I shared. And that, because by itself, that means, your model is cost aware and things like that. But that isn't the situation we're faced with. And you could have a model that has a correlation of 0.02 or 0.01 on the test sets that actually is additive to us. And that's the important thing about what we're doing. In some sense, the trick is that we only have to pay the costs once, and none of our users have to pay the costs. So we can actually make a better model, a better meta model, even if you had a model that performed extremely badly after costs. If it was helpful pre-costs, then we can add it to our model after that model has already paid costs. If you see what I mean. So it definitely is helpful to have all kinds of different models. But
there it is. Yeah, so having variation. You don't want everybody having a very high Numerai Sharpe. But also, some people chasing correlation, some people chasing regimes, and some people doing Numerai Sharpe. Yeah. But I think that the models that have good Numerai Sharpe will do well and have positive MMC and burn periods solely because they're not trying to hit home runs on correlation.
Yeah.
I think so.
You can't have it all.
You can't have it all, no, but
if you try to optimize for one of the things that when we did give out the Sharpe without the sort of subtracting off the costs, where we subtract 0.01 from the correlation before computing the Sharpe, is that if you ever optimize for Sharpe without doing that subtraction, it would somehow tend to really favor minimizing vol rather than maximizing correlation. And if you have this little penalty of costs, you tend to make models that maximize it in a more balanced way. And you can think about it, even in the normal Sharpe calculation, it's like return minus the risk-free rate.
Right.
If you think about subtracting the 0.01 is kind of like the risk-free rate or something.
No, it makes sense. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.